Good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, depending entirely on where you are. My name is Norm. I am working on getting this particular description out and having fun. Having a lot of fun, things not going exactly how they're supposed to go, but we're working through it. Um, so we're going to be talking about the thing of heaviness. Looks like that. Abnormal grief and mourning, being or feeling defiled, depression, despair, discouragement, hopelessness or frustration, loneliness, sadness, shame, self pity, unjustified feelings of guilt, or and lastly, having a wounded spirit. So, I'm going to reset the perspective so that we're just going to have one thing on screen, and then I'll get to recording. The very first one is abnormal grief and mourning. What does this look like? Starts with an event actually happened in your life. It was sad. You cry because of how sad it is. You may be heartbroken. You may have gone through something really, really rough. But then there is the unexplained portion of life where it's a man or a woman, a boy or a girl, just continue to cry. They don't know why. They don't understand what's going on. All that they know is that they really just feel better if they cry. The specifics as to why this is a demonic being is because God hasn't created us to just cry all the time. I remember there was this gal named Megan. Name has been changed. But Megan, in every situation of life, whether something was happy, whether something was sad, whether something made her angry, or any of the situations that happened in life, no matter what the scenario was, her response would be to cry every time. And then she would have to explain, no, this is tears of anger, or this is tears of shame, or this is tears of guilt, or this is tears of happiness, this is tears of, all these different emotions of why she would be crying. It wouldn't, it would very rarely, if at all, come out tears of sadness, tears of grief, or tears of mourning. In fact, whenever something terrible happened, she would be unable to cry. Now, the enemy had me on a very similar thing. He had me believing that the only reaction I had for sadness was to do nothing. For anger, I just laugh. For something that was actually happy, I'd laugh. Something that was really messed up, I'd laugh. Something where somebody was going through something really terrible and there shouldn't be any type of humor to it, I'd laugh. And when someone came to me with such a level of love, and they said, Norm, what you're going through is demonic. you are being manipulated to consistently be in a scenario where your laughter comes out like you're mocking people. And I said, well, I'm certainly not trying to mock anyone. And they said, well, that means it's spiritual. You're probably dealing with a principality of heaviness, but it has so um, manipulated your emotions so that the only real emotion that can come out is laughter. It made sense. So that's what abnormal grief and mourning looks like. Somebody who's just crying for every emotion. I was laughing for every emotion except mourning. Whenever I wanted to mourn, I could not cry. Same with my friend Megan. What about being or feeling defiled? Well, this one can be in the realm of uh, divination. It can be in the realm of whoredom, but in both the cases of the spirit of Jezebel and the thing of witchcraft, the soul that is defiled, or the person who feels like they are defiled, is the soul that has been used and abused by the kingdom of darkness as a place to put all the terrible emotions of life. And so that no matter how terrible the emotion is, those who feel or they are like they just know they're being defiled. It's the enemy taking every emotion of all the disappointments and highlighting it, making it much, much bigger than it actually is. The I'll be giving you quite a number of things. It's gonna sound like all the good news. All the good news is at the end of it. So bear with me as I go through all the bad news of the signature, how you can find it in your life, etc. Um, there was a woman that I got to know. Her name is Geneva. Again, name changed. Uh, she had grown up in a house where, regardless of what was being done right in her home, um, there was so much. Let's see, let me do it that way. No, sorry, I'm trying to. Oh, I know how. Do it like this, and then yeah. There is so much where no matter what was happening good in her life, she'd had a rough childhood. And so, regardless of what Geneva was going through, every time a little bit of it happened, it was like it happened all over again. And this was well before I got married. This is well before I even knew that God had me to be a deliverance teacher or a deliverance minister or someone who works with others who are wanting to be delivered. And so Geneva and I would talk things out, and she would say, I just keep thinking that God has a plan for my life, but I don't know what it is. But this thing of being defiled seems to be my middle name. That's a terrible, terrible way to feel. And she couldn't break free from it until I suggested to her, the man that you say that you're married to, and all the things that he's doing, and all the things that you're putting up with, What if the reason that you're having all these issues is because you haven't actually forgiven him for what he's done and let him go? What if that's the issue? Things to consider. The next one, depression, comes as a result of listening to the principality of depression. Now, this one is in league with the principality of lies to bring in perspectives of what it would be like to die. Depression is in the most in the most comical way that someone explained it to me. Depression is when somebody tries to flush a comedian down a toilet, and then it gets stuck in the pipes. He's down with all the stuff that people usually flush, but he can't get out. Starts out comical, ends up dark. So, depression has been described by very many people as being a mental illness. Mm-mm, no, not even close. There is no such thing of a mental illness, by the way, in my beliefs. Um, a mental illness is the world's version of saying you have a demonic entity directing your life. Um, Depression is a lack of expression. Depression is the inability to express anything. And when you do express it, it is extremely muted. Or it is so far off the description of how God designed you to be. I wrestled with depression from the age of 5 until the age of 33. And that's a really, really long time to be depressed. I didn't find out that I was depressed until I was 31. And then I was looking for ways to break it. Medication didn't help. Therapy kind of helped, but it didn't actually get me set free. What set me free? I'll tell you at the end. Next one. Kinda on the same section. Despair and discouragement. Now you do see a comma, there is something else coming up after that. But despair and discouragement. It comes about as a result of someone who has chosen to serve a demonic entity other than God. And almost always, that particular demonic entity has told them, you can do whatever you want. And for a time, doing whatever the person wants to do sounds amazing, sounds exciting, and for the person, it's just so exhilarating. But none of us were put on this earth to do what we want. All of us were put on this earth to serve. Now, in the realm of the kingdom of darkness, this idea of serving comes with an idea that once you serve somebody, you are going to be miserable. Look where despair, discouragement come in. That's the demonic trying to get you to say and trying to get you to agree that if you go this route, you will be full of despair, you'll be full of discouragement. That's what it looks like. So, how to be free of it? I tell you at the end. Discouragement, same thing. That comma is next to hopelessness or frustration. I remember I was on Instagram threads and an atheist was trying to tell another person, listen, you don't know what faith is because how could anyone have faith on things they can't see? How can you believe on something that you can't see and call that faith? I said, it isn't. Faith is something that you're hoping for. Belief is something that you understand and you're now choosing to go for it. Okay? So I explained it to both the atheist and the Christian like this. Um, when I sped past a police officer at 90 mile per hour in a 75 mile per hour zone, I had a hope he would not pull me over. But after 10 miles of driving and the police officer not showing up behind me, that's when I had a belief. That's the difference between faith and belief. So, hopelessness or frustration is a lack of something to have faith in. Literally. Lack of hope or just being so frustrated means the devil has pointed, devil and his imps have pointed you into a corner, gotten you to believe that once you're there, there is no way out. That's hopelessness. That's frustration. And very often, it will lead to loneliness. Now, I hope I don't have to explain what this looks like. But basically, the kingdom of darkness has you convinced that you will be alone forever. You won't have anybody else to talk to, you won't have anyone else to relate to, and worst of all, there is not anyone else in the entire world who has ever experienced what you're going through, so why should you even keep on going? That's loneliness. And the other thing about that is it is a 100% lie. Because we read in Matthew chapter 4 where Jesus was tempted with all the things that we were. You can also find that in Hebrews chapter 1. I'm not 100% sure on the placement there. But you can know that Jesus was tempted for everything that we've gone through. And possibly the worst part of it, at least in my imagination, he was being tempted by all the things that we have been tempted by. And he hadn't been eating anything. Yeah, that's a whole new level of loneliness. That's a whole new level of things going on that's beyond our control, and we can't have any type of release. And that, in turn, leads us to sadness. More of the same. It's like just a place where you have tears in your eyes all the time because things just are not going the way that you want them to go. But possibly most debilitating for every person is the fact that then the enemy brings you shame. Extremely frustrating because at that point you are on this perspective that everything you've done so far, everything that you have tried to do, and everything that's going on, that's going wrong in your life, somehow It's your fault. And you have to bear the blame of it. Shame is sin blame. Shame is 100% not of God. But the demonic will make sure to tell you that the reason that you're in this mess is because it's your doing entirely. I got good news at the end, but just bear with me for the bad news. The shame then leads to self-pity, where you are the reason why everything is going wrong. You ever heard of the victim spirit? You ever heard of the victim mentality? You ever heard of the person who wants to make sure that everybody knows there's so many things going wrong in their life and it's their own fault? It's called self-pity. It's called victim mentality. It's called being oppressed by the demonic principality of heaviness. This in turn leads to unjustified feelings of guilt, where no matter what it is that you're trying to do right, you are always guilty. Guilty for what your mama did, guilty for what your dad did, guilty for what the next door neighbor did, because you were involved. So no matter what happened in their life, no matter what things they are owning up to or not, you are just always guilty. That's unjustified. God is not expecting you to carry guilt, bloodline guilt. He's not expecting you to carry any guilt whatsoever because, number one, that's not Him. But, you know, undealt with guilt will lead you to having a wounded spirit. And a wounded spirit is a spirit that just absolutely cannot heal. You're always being wounded. You're always having difficulties sleeping. You're always having difficulty getting things right between you and someone else. You're always it's it's compounding. It just keeps going on and on and on and on and on and the perspective that a person has is, why can't it stop? When will this torture finally stop? Here's the good news. For all the things that are on this list, for all of it, guess what? Jesus spent some time on the earth teaching people the principles of the kingdom of heaven. Not just that, but he also took all of these principalities, took him to the thing to the edge of when he went into the pits of hell and he preached to every one of them about how the reason that he was even on the earth was to pay the penalty. And then he did his part. He died. Now he's calling you. He's calling me. He's calling us to do the same. He said that if anyone would want to be his disciple, they have to lay down their life, pick up the cross, follow him. What does that mean? You and me, we got to lay down everything, pick up this perspective that everything we're going to do in life can only come from God's design. And then weed out all of this perspective that are not God's design. That's what he did on the earth. And when we follow him, that's what we do as well. Thank you for stopping by. Check out the list of videos that comes after this, and I pray that you pray through that, because you are going to be set free from so many things. I guarantee it. Thanks for watching. And thanks for stopping by.